10 o'clock a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. The 3rd Annual Wheaton Arts Parade and Festival.
Welcome back to County Report this week. I'm Lorna Vigili. The county's Office of Procurement will continue to hold open houses every 3rd Wednesday through December. They take place from 10 to 11 a.m. at 255 Rockville Pike in Rockville.
The idea behind doing this was to support the vendor community that wants to do business with the county but is intimidated to because our processes are so complicated. Put them in front of my team who is able to help them navigate these processes in the interim. But honestly, my hope is that in a year's time that these events are actually no longer necessary because our process is so intuitive that you don't need an open house to be able to figure out how to do business with Montgomery County. That said, our doors will always be open, but I don't think this level of hand-holding should be necessary in the future.
For more information, go to MontgomeryCountyMD.gov/pro. Are you looking for a job? Well, the Census Bureau is hiring. The 2020 census will take place early next year, but the Bureau is already looking for workers. About 600 people will be hired in Montgomery County. If you're interested, apply online at 2020census.gov/jobs. Montgomery County has launched a new survey, the For Business Climate Survey. This is a step in gathering information to evaluate Montgomery County's business environment. Responses will help inform the county about actions it can take to encourage businesses to locate, expand, and thrive here. Survey responses will be also used to enhance business and county relations. There are 55 questions, and the survey takes about 20 minutes to complete. Business owners and residents can find the For Business Climate Survey by visiting the county's For Business website. The survey will be available until September 30th. The Montgomery County Friendship Picnic brings people of diverse cultures and faith together to make new friends and discuss ways to build a stronger community. The free picnic is scheduled for Sunday, September 22nd, from noon to 5 p.m. at the Wheaton Regional Park.
This year we feature a petting zoo for our kids. It's a new feature. We've got a reptile display as well for those who are a little more courageous about that and want to be around those kinds of things. We also have, again, opportunity then for kids to enjoy the bouncing houses and all those kinds of things as well. So a lot of entertainment for our kids, to include the trains and also to include the carousel as well. For our adults, we've got great entertainment. We've got blues, we've got jazz, we've got all kinds of things going on. And of course, for everyone, we have some marvelous food being provided for a number of different vendors from around our community. We'll have kosher food for those who are strictly kosher. We have those from our Muslim community who may in fact eat from a more halal tradition, and all those of us who eat just hot dogs and hamburgers. We have something for you as well.
Registration is requested for the free event. For more information, call 240-777-8479 or register by visiting MontgomeryCountyMD.gov/human rights. On November 5th, Rockville residents will be the first in Maryland to vote by mail for the city's new mayor and council. And Rockville 11 will air 3 live candidate debates. Rock 11's Cliff Cumber has the details.
On November 5th, Rockville residents will be the first in Maryland to vote by mail for the city's next mayor and council. Hear from each candidate directly about their vision for the city with 3 live debates televised by Rockville 11. The first is Tuesday, September 24th at the Rockville Senior Center from 6:30 to 8 p.m., presented by the League of Women Voters. Thomas Farm Community Center will host the second debate presented by the Rockville Chamber of Commerce on Wednesday, October 2nd from 1 to 2:30 p.m. The third debate will be at the Twinbrook Community Recreation Center from 6 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, October 15th, and is presented by Twinbrook Village in association with Twinbrook Community Association. The location and dates for the 3 debates were randomly selected. Tune into Rockville Cable Channel 11 or MBM Channel 997 to watch the debates live. Need more election information? Visit rockvillemd.gov/election. For County Report this week, I'm Cliff Cumber.
And with that, we close this edition of County Report this week. Remember, you can find more information about Montgomery County at montgomerycountymd.gov or follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Join us again at this time every week for a look at what's going on inside Montgomery County. I'm Lorna Virgili, and thank you for watching.
I'm pleased to welcome everyone to this Greater Washington Regional meeting of our Commission to Study Mental and Behavioral Health in Maryland. I want to thank our host, Montgomery College, for having us this evening, providing the space for us to do this and to talk about this critically important issue. As I've said before, the subject of this commission that we'll be discussing and continuing to discuss over the next several months and actually years, it's not always an easy topic to discuss, but this represents something that I should say an opportunity for us to make a real difference in people's lives and to truly change and reform the way we deliver services to some of our most vulnerable citizens. I like to say it's far past due that we take a serious look at how we deliver mental health services. As I say, when I say how we deliver, I also include the federal system as well, not just our state. And it's something that I feel very strongly about and an issue that is close to my heart. Over the last 4 or 5 years, 4.5 years since the governor and I have been in office, we've been working to address the state's opioid issue. And I'd say I came to understand, many of you probably already understand the relationship between the disease of addiction and mental illness. Previously, I looked at these conditions as separate and distinct, and I've learned, and as many of you already know, that substance use disorder and mental illness are often co-occurring. And for some people, it may have been a situation where people were self-medicating, where they had undiagnosed mental illness. And so we want to make sure that we, address these issues because they do not just affect the individual who is suffering, but also the families and their communities as well as their friends, I should say, too. So we want to take a fresh and serious look at how the state and the country, for that matter, bring care to individuals and families. And to that end, the administration created this commission, and the governor asked me to chair it. It was through an executive order earlier this year, and our goal is to identify ways to improve the services that affect many Marylanders that are suffering from mental illness and co-occurring conditions. And we're doing that by engaging families, advocates, practitioners, and those on the front lines of this issue.
I want to thank you for doing this, and I think this is a very important commission. I'll say I wish you had the abilities of the Kerwin Commission, because Kerwin's dealing with two sides of this problem, which is, A, what are the programs we need to move our children forward, and how are we going to pay for it? And the part that we need to confront, because I think we all know pretty much what we need to do. I think you all map out a reasonable way forward, and then the question is going to be, how do we pay for the reasonable way forward? And I would suggest that dealing with mental and behavioral health issues is as important as dealing with education issues. We're dealing with education issues because we lose these students in the beginning. We're losing people on the other end to behavioral and mental health issues. And both of them result in us not being able to take full advantage of the human resources that are available in our communities. When we lose people who can't do productive things, we lose the opportunity to take advantage of the skills and the intelligence they could bring to things, and we don't do it. So I hope that in the long run, we really get to tackle the financial challenges that it takes to really fund some of the things that we all know we could and should be able to do. I'll just tell you a little bit of some of the fun things I've been dealing with, because I've seen this issue front and center this week multiple times and over recent weeks. I've talked with groups of high school students who talk about levels of depression and stress that I've never seen, and most people have never seen. I was regaled with stories of students who had breakdowns in school, were taken out of school by ambulances, and got to spend days in the hospital getting mental health support. And I went to school in Montgomery County, and that was not the kind of stories that people told about what was going on inside the high schools. And these kids, to a person, went around the room and talked about stress and the impact on their lives in school. And that's, I think, important that, we know we don't have the counselors and psychologists in the schools that we need to have in the schools. I was meeting with the community in Montgomery County the other day, and they were talking about the growing number of homeless and the problems they were presenting in the community, and more prominent behaviors, more behaviors that were disturbing, and talking about the impacts on the businesses and the residents that they were trying to attract there. But what I took as encouraging is they did not want me to arrest people. A lot of times and in other days, that would have been the conversation. Can you put these people away? And instead, they said, you've got to find a way to treat these people. They need help, and we need the resources to be able to help them. And we need programs to be able to help them. I operate one of the largest mental health facilities probably in the state. Not the largest, because I think you have a bigger one.
Second to our state penitentiaries.
But ours, 1/3 of the people in our jail present with mental health issues. They really don't belong in jail. And if they got the treatment, if we were able to support them in mental health issues, they wouldn't be in jail. And the resources that we spend to put people in jail is enormous. And you got to wonder, if we took those same resources and put them in mental health, what would we get? And the same thing is true with homelessness. When I arrest somebody for not complying with not appearing in court and they get a bench warrant, what I'm going to spend to put somebody in a jail overnight or for 2 or 3 days is probably equal to what I could have put them in a good hotel in Montgomery County for a month. And they're going to go back and through this. We need more support for police crisis teams. We talk a lot about, more and more our police go out in the field. They encounter people who present mental health issues. They don't have the resources to deal with them. We don't have enough crisis teams to get there or get there in time, because what we have has to be in the right place and the right time to arrive there before an officer winds up doing something they would probably rather not do. And these are real life and death decisions that get made, simply because in some cases we weren't able to get the right resources to that place at the right time. So these are all real things that we deal with. And the last thing I'll talk about is, knowing people in the mental health who deal with folks who present both disabilities, but also mental health issues. And some of them receive services, but if their allocation for services runs out because they've spent what the
one. Check one, test one. Check one, guys in the back, confirm you can hear me when I get back. Check one, test one.
Okay, good morning, everyone. All right, I'm going to ask the presenters to come join us up here. Those of you who are speaking. Yes, thank you, Eva. Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time on a Saturday to participate in a discussion here about housing policy and to learn about a remarkable system in Vienna, Austria that has been known as the Vienna model or social housing. I had the pleasure of participating in a symposium yesterday at the University of Maryland, and there is a phenomenal exhibit there that I encourage each of you to go visit. And we're here today because the Austrian officials working with their embassy and the University of Maryland have they have kind of a roadshow or a tour that they can do. And it includes this amazing exhibit and then policy dialogue with the communities that, you know, are receiving the exhibit. So they're at the School of Architecture, and we have some professors from the University of Maryland who are here. You'll see an exhibit that goes into the now 100-year history of the Austrian housing model, and it has visualizations and lots of information. And we had a full day of discussion yesterday that was a lot of fun, but we wanted to follow up on that today in order to learn the lessons and to have more discussion about the issue. So first I want to say that you might wonder why a guy named Hans Riemer is having a discussion with Viennese housing officials. And I'd like to just put at rest the rumor I am not planning to run for the Viennese City Council. This is not part of that plan. But no, in honesty, I've often had to correct people in their pronunciation of my name over the years. I usually get introduced as Hans Reimer. And so I always, have to feel a little more assertive in how I correct people's in their pronunciation of my name. But when I have a chance to meet people who actually know how to say my name, the tides are turned, and I have to humbly use my incorrect pronunciation and wait to listen to hear how they say my name properly. So that had happened to me yesterday, and it might happen again today. But in relation, I don't speak German, and so my pronunciation of my family, one side of my family does have German lineage, but it was many generations ago. So my pronunciation of our guests will not be as appropriate. But before I attempt to do that, I just wanted to say my takeaways so far from this discussion has been really a learning experience. The Austrian system was created around, at post-World War I. It had its roots before that, though. There were movements globally to create systems of economic security in countries all over the world, and especially in Europe. And the policy ideas that came out of Europe were embraced in many ways in countries around the world, and ultimately some of them were embraced here in the United States. The most significant one that we all know is the system of economic security that we call Social Security. And every American pays 7% nearly of their income into a fund, and their employer matches that. And when you retire or if you become disabled, you're eligible to collect a benefit. And it creates a profound economic security solution that without it, more than half of all seniors would live in poverty, and millions of people who are disabled or who have had a deceased parent would live in poverty. My takeaway is that the social housing policy is that philosophy brought to a broader concern, which is it's not even really only just housing, because housing, as we all know, each of you who is in this room today knows that housing is a component of your whole life's well-being, and housing is has an impact on your health and on your education, the educational outcome of your children and your family and your life opportunities and the community that you have a chance to engage with. So housing is a profound issue, and in Vienna they have a profound solution. And they spend about $500 million a year, we've learned, in a construction program to either build new housing or renovate housing. And they have a mixed income model where it's not just housing for those who are low income, but their housing is available, it's for the middle class. And it also benefits those who are low income, just like our Social Security program. That is the recipe for success in social policy, is to appeal to the middle class, but to provide disproportionate benefits to those who need them most. And Austria has been so successful, and we're going to learn about that today. In the county, we will hear more about the tools that we have to create affordable housing and to build affordable communities. We have a great challenge ahead of us, and that is the Purple Line Corridor. That is a very focused challenge of building affordable housing and creating a community where everyone can live and thrive. I also believe it goes beyond just housing. Our challenge in the Purple Line Corridor is not only to provide affordable housing, but it is to create prosperity, it is to build a community where people can thrive, and that means jobs and vitality and growth and progress. And I think what you'll see really is that that the Viennese have been successful in that bigger picture, not just in providing for housing. So we are here today to learn about tools that we may be able to apply to learn more about our solutions. Our housing director, Mr. Nagam, will talk about the county's solutions. We're going to hear from our Austrian counterparts, and we're going to have a dialogue that will be partly at the dais here, and then partly at the with you in the room. And now I'd like to introduce my counterparts. So I want to start with it'll be Kurt Sturzenbecker, who is our elected official, who serves on the City of Vienna Council as well as in the legislature. And he is the chairman of the Committee on Finance, Economy, Digitalization, and International Affairs. And we really appreciate your taking the time to lead your colleagues here to be with us today. Michael Stengel is the Deputy Director of the Viennese Housing Agency, and a lot of knowledge about the implementation of that program. Joseph Ser is the Director of the One Service Wien, and he will explain his role there. And Katharina Bayer is an architect, and she has a presentation that we'll see. We're going to see a movie, just a film, a very brief film, 6-minute film in just a moment. Eva Schofer is with the Austrian Embassy. She may help with translation. And Christian Schantel is here. There he is. Thank you, Christian. And representing the American team, we have it's probably a battle we're not going to win, just like the World Cup here. Taking the field. $500 million. Yeah, $500 million Head Start helps. Asim Nagam is our new director at the Montgomery County Department of Housing and Community Affairs. He's in his first week on the job. He comes to us from Fairfax County, and we're really pleased to have him in his leadership role for the executive branch. We have Zachary Marks, who's the Director of Development and Real Estate with the Housing Opportunities Commission, which is one of our major agencies creating affordable housing. We have McLean Quinn, who is our private sector expert and voice here with EYA, and EYA has been a groundbreaking partner to the county, building affordable communities in partnership often with the Housing Opportunities Commission, and we are really, really appreciative of their approach. We have Linda McMillan, who is our council staffer on housing policy among issues, and she will participate in our dialogue. Shruti Badnagar, she may be in Silver Spring at the climate. We scheduled our event here about a year before the Climate Justice Rally was scheduled, or the Climate Justice Town Hall, and we couldn't really undo that because we had international guests. So that is happening, but the Sierra Club is our sponsor today, and Pam Lindstrom was a she was she suggested this event, and that is why we're here today, and she'll ask a question. And then Delegate Von Stewart is here. Delegate Stewart introduced legislation in Annapolis to get the conversation started about social housing. He's a new member, but a brilliant young man, and he's going to make waves in the legislature. And as I said, I'm Hans Reimer, and so I'd like to now ask my committee colleague, Andrew Friedson, to introduce himself. I, as you know, chair the Council's Planning, Housing, Economic Development Committee, and I couldn't be happier to have Andrew Friedson on that committee. His savvy, his knowledge, his commitment to the issues, and his willingness to tackle them is far advanced his relatively young age, and he's doing a tremendous job at the council. So, Andrew, would you like to just share some words?
Thank you for that. I'm here because Hans Reimer is my chairman. No, I'm here to learn, really. There was ground rules that the chair mentioned that you either had to be chair of the committee or a subject matter expert to sit on the dais, and unfortunately I don't qualify for either of those things. So I'll be sitting in the audience today, which would be a nice turn of events. But we had a commitment from Mr. Reimer that he's not running for the Vienna Council, which I think was helpful. But I got to be honest, Kurt Sturzenbecker looks awfully comfortable in my chair. So, and I think you're going to demonstrate that you're smarter than me today too. So if you could just, throw that in there, commitment on the record, so that everybody can see, that would be helpful and help me sleep a little bit tonight. But I'm honored to be here, and this is one of the most important issues that we have to tackle. I think we have done a good job early on in this term of really giving this issue the seriousness that it deserves. We are way behind where we need to be. It's going to require a commitment. I'm not sure that we have $500 million ready to go, but it's important that we understand what all of the options are that are available, and that we think through this in a comprehensive way. And Hans's leadership on this has really been terrific in making sure that we are driving the conversation, and we are bringing in folks who know more than we do, and making sure that we are tackling our housing crisis, because of all the things that we talk about, there's no social issue that's more important than where people have to put their head to their pillow, and how much of the money that they have to spend in order to just be able to go to sleep in a place that is reasonable and comfortable and provides them with a decent quality of life. And in a place like Montgomery County, where we think of how great it is, too many people are strapped with 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70% of their income going to housing just to be able to be part of our community. And so it's an economic development issue, it's a social issue, it's a moral issue. And so I look forward to learning a lot today, and appreciate the fact that I get to sit in the audience.
All right.
So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. All right, so quick announcement. If you are here for the Department of Housing and Community Affairs first-time homebuyer seminar, you're in the wrong room. That is on a different floor in this building, and although it is 7th floor, although it is certainly related. So we will now see the video. They have a council staff produced video highlighting the issue, and then we will turn to our colleagues from Vienna to share some remarks from their presentations.
Across the globe, Vienna, Austria frequently ranks among the cities with the highest quality of life. That grade is often attributed to its accessibility to transit, open space, and rents that would be unheard of here in the United States. More than 60% of Viennese live in subsidized or municipal rental flats, which translates to about 45% of the housing market.
Well, we have a population of 1.9 million inhabitants right now. In total, about 1 million apartments in our city, and 200,000 of them are in the ownership of a non-profit or limited profited company, and 220,000 are in the ownership of the city of Vienna.
The remainder of the units are privately owned. Social housing in Vienna has been evolving for close to 100 years.
In Vienna, it all started before the First World War, at the end of the Austrian monarchy. Vienna was a very big city at that time, but the housing situation was a disaster. And the number of people who in the working class had illness, were homeless. It was huge. So because of these experiences, after the First World War elected government then took great efforts to improve the housing situation.
Vienna funds its housing construction through income tax revenue. The quota is regulated by federal law and amounts to about 1% of each resident's income. That amounts to about $550 million a year that's spent on housing construction.
In the Second World War, 87,000 apartments in Vienna had been destroyed. So the need for a new construction program after this war was huge, and the city of Vienna started right away.
To be eligible for a flat, the monthly income for a family of two living in a household cannot exceed $7,600. The average rent is about 50 cents per square foot and 70 cents for new properties.
It's the same rent for everybody. We don't differ, and we also don't differ because of the, let's say, area where the apartment is situated. You can have an apartment in the richest areas of Vienna, and you will have to pay the same price than in the fringes of the city, for instance. So we don't differ here at all. That's Austrian law. I think that's one of the main reasons why we have no-go areas, no ghetto situations. A social mix within our city and within our apartment complexes, and that's what we are proud.
Tenants in Vienna are entitled to rights. Rents are under 25% of a person's income, and units can be passed on to a family member's descendant. And the city offers residents housing benefits if they are unable to pay their monthly rent.
So we have a team, for instance, for eviction prevention. We have many social workers going through our apartment complexes, trying to bring the people together, to implement measures like gardening together, bringing people together so they know each other, they have a nice and friendly relationship within the community. So we're not just the owner and the caretaker, we also take care of the people living in our apartments.
Today, the city of Vienna is working to keep up with the rapid growth with the construction of new units. There's currently about an 18-month waiting period for a flat.
The last municipal housing complex for now was built in 2004, and since the 1950s, 1960s, the amount of apartments which are subsidized but not on the ownership of the city of Vienna increased, and the number of municipal housing apartments decreased.
When a site comes up for a new project, there's a property developer competition where up to 50 different companies come up with a pitch to construct the next housing project. They are judged on their merits in 4 different areas.
Economy, somebody has to pay for the project. Ecology, social sustainability, and architecture. Those are the 4 pillars which are the important facts for choosing the best project. We have right now 57 non-profit and limited profit companies in our city, so they are in competition against each other.
Could a model like Vienna's work here in Montgomery County? Possibly, but it would mean big changes in the way we live.
I think the American way of life is totally different in that aspect, so it's not so easy to compare those situations. One of the most famous and well-known apartment complexes is named after George Washington. In Vienna. What we are proud of is the fact that we have a social mix within our apartments. I think that's a key factor, because if you have apartments just for the very poor, you get ghetto situations, and you will have many people who don't want to live in these areas. So that's something you have to avoid. I think that's very, very important.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to our council staff, and again to Linda McMillan and their terrific video team, Susan and Mike. We will now hear from our Austrian colleagues, and I think we'll start with Mr. Sturzenbecker, our council member. Thank you again for journeying here to share your word with us.
Yeah, thank you, dear Hans Riemer.
Notes.
Yes. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I thank for this invitation to discuss here the social housing. I think it's very important and very interesting to exchange experience, to exchange views, to exchange facts about social housing. And I think that this film already showed us all. Yes, Mr. Christian has already all told what I wanted to say, but I think I have some details what I can add it. Yes. But thank you very much once again for the organizing too this interesting conference, and I'm very pleased that on a Saturday in the morning so many people are interested in social housing. Yes, I think this is wonderful. Yes, and now about the main issues I wanted to say you. How many minutes I have time? Maybe. Oh yes. There are no ladies who have to show. I have only two. Oh yes, you decided. Okay. Yes, we in Vienna, we see housing as well as other services for the public, like the public transport system, the water supply, or the waste management as a basic human right. That's for us a basic human right and not a good. Yes, what we only say, yeah, the market should regulate it. And so this is the reason why Vienna invests each year, as we have seen in the film, each year about $400 million in housing construction and the restoration of older buildings, and other $110 million are dispersed to individuals who are unable to afford even subsidized rents. And I think this is one main issue. Then we strongly believe that public services, including houses, cannot be left to the private market alone. Yes, the private market, the market system is very important for our political and economical system. But in this field, in the housing, because here we have a human right, the private market alone isn't able to manage it. That's why all in Vienna spends around, I have already said, it depends, but $550 million on housing costs per year, and this funding through taxation creates a reliable basis for planning this system. The funding of social housing construction in Austria is tied to a fixed portion of income tax, housing promotion contribution, and the quota is regulated by a federal law and amounts to 0.5% of the gross pay of the income of employers and employees. So only 0.5%. That's not very much. Yes, everybody is able to pay this, but the benefits are big, yes, and for society and for many, many people. On the basis of this tax, Vienna receives an annual amount about approximately $280 million for housing construction, also only housing construction purposes from the federal state. In 2019, the financial benefits paid by the city of Vienna to projects amount to $403 million. In 2018, housing promotion subsidies were granted by the provincial government of Vienna for approximately 6,000 dwellings. These expenditures are regulated in the Housing Construction Promotion Act, also in German Wohnbauförderungsgesetz, which does not only promote the construction of the new houses, but also ensures the preservation of existing buildings through renovation. Thus, the buildings can be brought up to the latest technical standard and adapted to current needs of the residents. Because we have districts in Austria where we can build new buildings, yes, there's much space, and in other we don't have any space, and there we concentrate us to the renovation. Besides the funding, I have already said it, we have then the subjective on approximately $210 million too for the individual, the subjective help, we say. The construction, and the next is a little bit complicated, and perhaps you can ask after my speech, but I want to tell you because it's very interesting. The construction of new subsidized housing is regulated by strict economic, ecological, architectural criteria and must be socially sustainable. We have seen it in the film too. These four categories have the same right. Yes, so once again, we have the ecology, then the social and the economy, and the sustainability. And in a developer competitions are an important tool in the development of new subsidized residential buildings. They are organized by the Wohnfonds Wien. This is the Vienna's Fund for Housing Construction and Urban Renewal. And the Wohnfonds Wien is a non-profit organization that acts on behalf of the city of Vienna, both in acquiring and providing land and in the field of project development and quality assurance in subsidized housing construction in the Austrian capital. And for housing construction projects with a volume of at least 500 subsidized dwellings, developers' competitions are mandatory. It is mandatory. Smaller projects are evaluated by the Land Advisory Board, which is also a part of Wohnfonds Wien. And the properties for developers' competitions are owned either by Wohnfonds Wien or by cooperation partners. And the project teams composed of project developers, architects, open space planners, and other experts devise precisely calculated implementation concepts for developers' competitions. As we have a competition, yes, and the best will win. That's very important. And any interdisciplinary jury then evaluates the entries and selects the best, highest quality projects. The winning team then purchases the land at fixed prices. That means the competition entries are evaluated on the basis of a four-pillar model. This assessment matrix comprises, once again, the four criteria. I already said this, but it's very, very important. Yes, economy, social sustainability, architecture, and ecology. That means if you have a project which is economically very, very good, yes, and the architecture is bad, you don't have a chance, yes. And on the other side, if you have an ecological best program, yes, and the best architecture, but it is not social sustainability conform or not economical, you won't win it, yes. All four criteria are important, and the jury will give prize the winner who has all four criteria in a good standard. It is the task of the jury to identify balanced entries that ensure quality in all four areas, as I already have said. Under these conditions, the competitions create an innovative supply of housing units that reflect the needs of the population and very affordable, while safeguarding the efficient use of housing promotion funds. It should be emphasized that the winning projects must be implemented as submitted. Both non- or limited profit and commercial developers may participate to the competitions. And the winning team then purchases the construction site at a fixed price. The housing promotion dispersed up to 35% of the total construction costs and enables the team to implement the victorious project. And in return, the developers guarantee certain planning qualities and fixed construction costs and stable rents levels. So these are planning qualities, fixed construction costs, and stable rent levels. And now, for sure, money is a key issue in building up affordable housing. But besides that, there are other important factors that let tenants sleep well, and one is the tenancy law, what we have in Austria, the Mietrechtsgesetz. That means that if you have a rent, yes, if you are a tenant, yes, in the social housing, you have unlimited tenancy, perhaps until the end of your life, and your children will follow you. Yes, that's very important. In the private economy, there it is the situation that more than the half of the dwellings are not unlimited, they are limited already, yes, and we don't like this, because after 3 or 5 years they need a new apartment, or the landlord can higher the level of the tenants, yes, and you pay much more after this. Yes, and I have already time, or is this perhaps just a little, yes. Also, I think this was the most important thing. My friend Christian already has written for me some important other facts too, and if I don't say it to you, he will not be happy, but I think it's enough for the first round. But what is really very, very important is that our framework was built in 100 years. Yes, you must see that we began in 1919, then we had 15 years time until 33, 34 of the last century. Then we had 2 decades of fascism, first the Austrian fascism, then the most brutal Hitler fascism, and until 45, yes, and there was much destroyed, yes, and after 45 we continued this system until today, and so we have as we saw in the film, 220,000 municipality dwellings, where the municipality is the owner, yes, and we have 200 thousand subsidized dwellings where we gave money according to this system, as I told you, and because of that, they are cheap in the price, yes. And so with this system, we have the situation that more than the half of the Viennese people lives in the social housing. Yes, that means social housing is in Vienna not a thing for the very poor. It is a thing for the middle class too, and for the higher middle class. And so the middle class is not against this system, because they know it's our system too, and they like to pay the 0.5 of this tax, because they know our children get a good dwelling according to this system, and I think it's a good system. Thank you very much.
That was excellent. Thank you so much, Councilman. There was a lot we will unpack. You presented a lot of facts, and our dialogue will follow up on many of those points. Michael Stengel, you're next. Is there something you'll like to add to that? Thank you. And please explain your role as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the chance saying a few words just about the topic social housing in Vienna, which is one of the, of course, the most important things that you could know about Vienna anyhow. There are some, of course, there's a lot of cultural thing you probably have heard about, but the social housing is the core of what makes Vienna the city that it is today, of course. So let's say, what is my role in that topic? I'm Vice Director, Deputy, as you like, for the Municipal Housing Department in Vienna. Agency, okay. It's called agency. I'm sorry. If there's some English words you may not understand, I apologize for that up front. So, honestly, my role is together with my colleagues to take care that the municipal housing takes place and happens. So we are the one that take care about the facilities. We are giving the dwellings to the people, and we also make sure that new dwellings come up and are built. So with that range, I think it's quite a lot to do. Anyhow, let me say Vienna is, of course, a city with a high level of social stability, and we are quite sure this. The main reason for that is, of course, because we have a system for social housing which is open to anyone. Kurt Stützenberg had said before, it's very open, and there are less restrictions for people to get such a housing. Let me say some words about the history of the social housing. We've already heard it's about 100 years ago when social housing starting in 1919. In that days, Vienna has been even bigger than it is today. We are 1.9 million people inhabitants in Vienna today. And in that days, there were 2 million people in Vienna, and over 300,000 inhabitants had no access to decent housing space. So there were catastrophic situations when people had to share beds, and they were homeless in large scales. Even in that days, Vienna was said to be the city with the worst housing conditions. That difference to now. So what is in a quite good condition today has been really bad that days. The program we started in 1919 resulted in the foundation of the first residential housing program in 1923, when at first 25,000 new apartments should be built in 5 years, and then another 30,000 from 1929 to 1933. Before fascism and the Second World War appeared, there were already 66,000 apartments in place, which covered almost 10% of the inhabitants of Vienna. They already were living in social housing apartments. The principle of social housing construction has already been dealing with the need to be flexible in bringing just the answers to what the people need, bringing apartments in a quality that the people need. One of the dogmas that have been set up these days was bringing light, air and sun to the people, because of course in the bad housing conditions that took place in the beginning of the 1900s, disease were a big problem, just because of the bad conditions people had to face. Nowadays, there is still a big demand on public living, on social housing, and we are having programs to do something for it. There is especially the Smart Residential program, which is in place today, which offers flats that are more focused on the real need. The flats are probably smaller, which makes it a bit cheaper, but highly efficient. And that's one of the points. And of course, we just started another program, the new municipal housing construction program, which is something like, we call it Gemeindebau, which means municipal housing, and it's Gemeindebau now. We restarted that program, building municipal housing for the city and for the inhabitants. So, okay, I see I need to come to an end. Let me just say one thing that I think we're very, very proud of. If you come to Vienna, you will not be able to guess from the postcode how much a person earns. And that's something that is very, very important. All over the city, people can live in affordable apartments in any place. Doesn't matter if it's a city center or somewhere outside. And the prices are, for everyone and in every place, quite the same, which is, of course, a very important thing. And don't forget, it's more than 50%, 60% of the Viennese inhabitants that have access to, or they are using social housing, and more than 75% have access to the program. So, okay, thank you so far.
Thank you, Mr. Stengel. So we'll have two more presentations, and I'll ask our presenters to be as brief as they can. One will include some visual imagery, and then we will turn it to dialogue. And I want to really, again, appreciate my panelists for being here. So, Joseph?
Yeah.
Mr. Sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josef Chair, and I would like to talk about the social security in social housing. I established One Partner 10 years ago, and I'm managing since then. One Partner is the neighborhood service in the municipal housing of Vienna, or as we say in German, Wiener Gemeindebau, and the second organization beside Wiener Wohnen, which is active in the municipal housing. Maybe you ask yourself, why two organizations and how we work together. To put it simply, if Wiener Gemeindebau were a computer, Wiener Wohnen would be the hardware, all the houses and buildings and this stuff. And One partner would be the software. We strive for neighborly cooperation, participation, communication between the residents, but also with the administration and the city of Vienna. We offer community outreach work, social counseling in difficult life situations, and if the communication between the residents is not suitable, we offer professional conflict management. Before I talk about the social challenges and how we react to them, let me make a few philosophical and political comments on this topic. I think it will make easier to understand what we do and why. Michael Stangl has already pointed out our history of Red Vienna, and I would like to stress again that this was not just a huge housing program. All areas of life were affected. Health, education, work, welfare, art and culture, leisure time, and much more. It was about the realization of a great socio-political idea of a better future after World War I. It was about the development of a new, better society, a new society based on the values of freedom, equality, justice, and solidarity. And we still very attached to these values in a contemporary way. Therefore, we do not see housing as a lucrative source of income. For us, housing is a human right. And Kurt Stützenbecher said this already. For this reason, the necessary social and community outreach work in the social housing estates is not subject of any economist cost-benefits analysis. But the landlord, the city of Vienna, provide these resources which are necessary to ensure a good, peaceful, safe life for all, regardless of income. Our activities are based on two pillars. On the one hand, we take many initiatives to actively promote good neighborly relations. We offer time, space, and opportunity to get to know your neighbors and to meet each other. Like Gordon Allport, the founder of the contact theory, we believe that the contact between people reduced hostility, prejudice, and discrimination. And this creates a social climate of acceptance. This happens, for example, through events in which we prepare meals together, we do sport together, neighbors teach their neighbors German, we sing and make music together, or we work in a community garden. The resulting relationships lead to the fact that the difference of interests and conflicts do not arise, or that the residents can solve them themselves. At these events, the residents came into a low threshold contact with one partner and know that they can turn to us with confidence in the event of a problem. If conflicts nevertheless arise, our second pillar in conflict management comes into play. Our teams consist of experts from different professions, from social workers and psychologists to career changers. We have 60 trained mediators who speak 35 different languages. They mediate in conflicts without being partial for one side and do not make any value judgments. They mediate between the different positions and thus try to contribute to a common solution. In our work, it is important to my 160 employees and to me that we are out in the field with the residents, in their community, and not sitting in a nice office and waiting for someone to come. We have 26 locations in the Wiener Gemeindebau in all city districts and can therefore be easily reached and react quickly to all the situation. One partner is a service of the city of Vienna, which is quite unique in the whole world, and some envy us for it. And the fact that our work contributes to maintaining and expanding this high quality of life motivates us in our daily work to give our best again and again. And I'm very proud to be able to share our experience with you here today, and it show us that we are maybe on the right track. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Josef, for explaining the philosophy and the values of the program and the work in the community. And our final presenter will be Katharina Bayer, and she is an architect, and she has some helpful visualizations for us as well.
because it is a 30-minute presentation, I have to skip some slides, so maybe it's easier if I do it. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for being able also today to present some of our work. I'm an architect working in an architectural office in Vienna, and we are specialized in housing, so we do mainly subsidized housing. And I had a 30-minute presentation today, so I tried to make it fit for maybe 5 or 10 minutes here, so I will skip many slides, but still I want to give you a short impression about the housing projects we do. And what you have to know, I think, is that living in subsidized housing in Vienna is not a bad compromise, but normally, or mostly, the quality of living is even higher than on the free market because of the system you heard, and all the projects run are results of competitions. The concepts are very broad, and you get even, I would say, higher quality in subsidized housing very often than on the free market. So people are really longing for these apartments. And yeah, we, as I said, we specialized in housing, in multi-story housing, and we even have a special specialization in that field. We specialized in co-housing projects, and I want to show you one of these projects just to give you an insight in the opportunities that you have within the subsidized housing system. Let me skip the introduction. We are in a long tradition, of course, as architects, and we also work in this general framework that Kurt Sturzenbecher already explained to you. So this 4-pillar system, we have to run through these developer competitions. We always have to build interdisciplinary teams with developers, sociologists, landscape architects, already in the competition phase. So that means we are working on a very broad concept, and this actually helps us to make very sustainable projects. The project, and then we also, with this system, we are able to really address the challenges, the current challenges we face as a society. So also that differs, I think, to the free market, that in subsidized housing, you will find solutions for single parents, for old people, for younger people, that you will not find on the free market, because they are only interested in the economic outcome of a project. But in subsidized housing, we have the social sustainability aspect that is very important. So there are a lot of special housing forms that you only can find in the subsidized housing system. And one of these projects we made, actually it started in 2009, is a co-housing project, which actually means that the future inhabitants, the users, were already involved in the design process from the beginning. So they were actually initiating the project, and what, of course, makes the difference then is not so much the architectural outcome, but the genesis of this project. And actually, it didn't start with an architectural design, but it started with 15 people who were creating a vision together of how they want to live together within the city. And in short, it was they wanted individuality within community, in a communicative architecture, and being a nucleus of sustainability. And with this group, actually, we decided to go into a competition, into a developer competition. So we made a project team with the group, a developer, and some experts. And we were designing the main layout of the project in the competition. And then we could win. We had a party, but then also the group knew that they would have to. They had to grow. So they met info meetings to find their future neighbors. And after 2 months, they had a group of 50 adults with whom we went through this participatory planning process to design the building after their needs. So this participation was on 3 levels. You could design your apartment after your needs with us in personal meetings. There was a group of architecture designing all the community and general spaces with us. And for very important questions like programming the community spaces, the whole group was involved. And also the distributions of the flat, for instance, was made with the whole group. And of course, this very complex system of planning with 50 people has to be organized in a way. We found a very good form for that. It's not basis democracy, but sociocracy. So I can explain that later if someone is interested. But what actually I can show you what is the outcome of this, a very long 3-year process, and what people now can how they can live within this project. It is a 7-story building. It's a concrete construction with a wooden facade. About 100 people live there, so 67 adults and 33 children. They live along a central hallway in 39 apartments. Due to this participatory process, every apartment is different. So we have very small apartments, very compact apartments. We have shared flats for students and apartments of all sizes. And this was possible because we designed a system that was open to adaptability and will be open for change in the future also for that. We also have 350 square meters of office and commerce in the project. Many people who live there also work there. For instance, 8 people of the house run a grocery store, a cafe and grocery store beside their other jobs. And this also enlivens the neighborhood. We have 700 square meters of community spaces, many of them in the basement that are enlightened by courtyards. There is an event space, we have a workshop, we have a shared community kitchen with the children playroom next to it. And the whole rooftop, for instance, is also for the community. So the best part of the house is accessible to all. We have there a sauna, library, guest apartments, and a rooftop garden. But the project also goes far beyond architecture and the social aspects. For instance, as they wanted to be sustainable, mobility was a very important fact, and they have a really big bicycle storage with a bicycle workshop. They have a car sharing, so they are sharing 6 private cars, and they have community gardens that they share with the neighbors. So it's also a very good it also has a very good effect on the neighborhood, the project. And what is also special is that this group of private people, they built an association and bought the house from the developer. And it's not individual ownership, but it's a shared ownership. So if you're always owner and tenant at the same time, so you have this double role. And also if you move out, you give back the apartment to the association. So you cannot speculate with your apartment. So it will always be maintained in this idea of community and sustainability by this association. And we did a lot of other projects after that, also co-housing projects and non-co-housing projects, and we always try to understand architecture as a process that not only is about designing a building, but for us it is important actually to, I want to show you just one picture in the end. So we see that it is a process that has to be designed, and that along this process it is possible that not only a building will occur, but that a community can build around this process. And you have another outcome after these 3 years. There's not only a building, but there are people that really took self-determination of how they want to live together. So I think this is also one very important aspect of the subsidized housing system in Vienna. Thank you very much.
All right. Now we'll have some reactions from our panelists, and then we'll have reactions from our audience. So I will start with my left, Zachary Marks with the Housing Opportunities Commission.
See, is that on? There we go.
Sure, you could do that.
The Salon am Park. It's a perfect place for others to feel the spirit of this house and to get in touch with what is happening here with the events and with the people.
We decided to place the more public infrastructure in the ground floor. So we have a coffee shop and the architectural office in the ground floor situated to the street. And we also have a community kitchen, the playroom, and the room for bicycles situated to the courtyard.
And the playroom is for being wild and loud and everything we don't want to have in our flats. Half of us, I guess, are gardening out here. Most of us have something on the balcony. So, yeah, hi, how is it going? And what are you growing there? And how is that growing well? And then you start watering, and the kids start playing around. And this is the typical Saturday, you know. Things just happen. Sometimes I just take out the trash, not because I have to take it out, because I think I might meet someone.
I've learned that in the Wohnprojekt, my personal space, it's the whole house and there's a lot more contact with the neighbors. This makes architecture, this space for conversation, for community, for meeting other people.
Great. Now it's time for some dialogue. So we have our practitioners and our policy experts who will either react or ask questions, and then we'll open it up. So I'll start with Zachary Marks, who is with our Housing Opportunities Commission. Mr. Marks.
Thank you, and thank you to our guests. I think probably the thing that impresses me the most about this is that, HOC is the housing authority of the HFA, Housing Finance Agency for the county. We're often just out there amongst a sea of other practitioners, just trying to make individual projects happen. And so what I'm most impressed with is the thoughtfulness and really the philosophy. There seems to really be a level of thinking around housing, not just as something to be financed and constructed. So I think I've already got a number of really interesting, comments to take back to my colleagues around how to think about these things, not just strategically but philosophically. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'll just end with something that I'm curious about, which is how long it would take. Once you've sort of conceived of the building, how long does it take to get through the land use process, what we call entitlement, in terms of getting zoned and permitted to build, and how long it takes typically to construct, your average building? I'd certainly be curious to to understand that as well. But thank you very much. That was great.
Okay, sure. I'll answer directly. The process to be ready to build is something about, I guess, 3 years, of course, and it depends on the building size. Could be another 2 or 3 years for the building itself. But I think that shouldn't be very different to other situations. Sure.
Great. Asim Nagam.
Good morning. I've been on the job for a week, but feels like I've been here for years. But it's all good. Thanks to Councilmember Reamer for inviting me today. I think this symposium is pretty timely. Yesterday I was had a chance to speak and interact with folks at University of Maryland. And there were a lot of students in the audience, which was very heartening to see that our next generation is really interested in concepts like social housing and then affordable housing, per se. If you look at, our friends in Vienna, they figured out certain things several years ago, which we are focusing on it now. They figured out, hey, land is a pretty important piece of the puzzle in building anything, whether it's marketed housing or affordable housing. They figured out how to pay for the housing. There should be dedicated funding to build any type of housing. So they figured that out. They figured out we need to have inclusive communities. It can't be just, affordable housing in one part of the city or county and where people can just pinpoint, hey, that's where low-income population lives. They want to integrate the entire social fabric, which we can learn from. They looked at that the quality of housing, of whether it's social housing or marketed housing, should be no different. So if in the building with 200 units or something, if they are marketed units and then they have social housing within that building, no one can tell, hey, this unit is affordable housing. And that's what we strive for in Montgomery County. Up until a week ago, I was doing affordable housing in Fairfax County, and both Montgomery and Fairfax, they are sister counties, similar issues, so I can really relate to the issues from across the river over here where I actually live now, and it's good to serve the county where I'm living. So there are certain things which we can learn from. We may not get to $500 million on an annual basis for affordable housing. We wish we can get there. We may not get to the rents of 50 cents to 70 cents per square foot in this region. But there's certain things which we can learn in terms of how we use our land. And as I was saying yesterday, even if you take out the land out of the equation, there is always a delta. If you are a numbers cruncher, there's a delta, and we fill in the gap through a variety of tools, whether it's the county funds through HEF or payment in lieu of taxes, or we have federal and state programs. Yesterday we heard from the state representative about federal programs. We use that. We use rental agreements to promote affordable housing. But then in our programs, we reach out to entire population, anywhere from 50% or below to 100 or 120% when it comes to home ownership. But the focus is to serve people at or below 50% of AMI, which is hard to reach, which no one wants to serve easily. And that's where our programs come handy. And I don't want to take too much time because I want to leave some time for the actual discussion, where we can step in. And from a toolbox, and thanks to Councilman Reamer, Councilman Friedson, and Councilman Giovando, who is not here, for their leadership on the Fed committee, for supporting us in our policies and programs. One thing that it will be important for me to know, when you're putting the financing structure together in the city of Vienna, what a typical financing structure looks like, although it's social housing, because I was doing back of the envelope calculation yesterday, and the housing cost may not be that cheap in city of Vienna versus here. So to get to the rent levels of 50 to 70 cents per square foot, I was just curious what the overall financing stack looks like in a typical transaction. But there are certain things which we can certainly learn from City of Vienna. So thank you very much.
So the financing of such a project is, I think it sounds quite simple, honestly. It's just one part, financing of the company who is building, of course, and there are subsidies, and there's not much more. I can say 1/3 of the project is subsidized, something like this, and the rest has to be financed by the project owner. Also because of the land for this project is affordable, that works. So we can come to these prices having total construction costs of something like 2,200 euros per square meter, which is sufficient.
Thank you. So that you know, just to put in the perspective, back in the day, and I'll be showing my age here, we used to do, or we could do affordable housing projects with first mortgage, maybe tax-rate equity. But now, more often than not, we have layers of financing to make the project work. The reason being, we do not have $500 million on an annual basis to put into affordable housing. So in my typical project, I see 7 to 8 layers of financing to serve lower income population. So that's the difference between our part of the world versus across the pond, where we have the social housing concept. So thank you.
Thank you, Director.
So just want to...
McLean Quinn with EYA. Again, I want to commend you. EYA and HOC partner on affordable housing communities that are for the middle class and for people of lower income and for at various price points. We have a vision of building communities in Littonsville, in West Bard, in places throughout this county. And the partnership has been, I think, some of the best work that we've done in affordable housing. And I just really want to say I appreciate that approach. And I'm learning today that maybe there's more in common with that approach with the social housing model than perhaps I had expected. McLean.
Thank you, Hans, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's been fascinating to learn more about social housing in Vienna, and I will say anytime I've been to Europe, I always leave and say, why can't we do what they do? And it's not just the housing side of things, right, but the urban environment, the transportation, the quality of life that cities like Vienna exhibit is truly extraordinary and has always felt incredibly foreign to me, to be completely honest. I think the thing that I could relate most with in the video was seeing the young kids running around rambunctiously, which feels a lot like my house where chaos is just constant. So I'm glad that at least the children in Vienna are children the way our children are children too. Some of the things that really struck me are the economics. And so I think what it demonstrates, the rents of 50 cents to 70 cents per square foot, what it demonstrates is that the public sector is the solution to this type of problem, that public-private partnerships are a way of implementing the solution. I think that the idea of these competitions which are used in Vienna to select project partners are an example of how these projects can be run and led, and certainly here in projects that we have done with HOC, with the DC Housing Authority, with the Alexandria Redevelopment and Housing Authority, we have been part of competitions, RFP processes, requests for proposal, where we compete against other developers, for-profit, nonprofit, for opportunities to develop mixed income housing in various places. And they use often in these design competitions or these RFPs, they use criteria not dissimilar to the 4 criteria that you outlined, the environmental, the social, the economic, and the architectural or design. And so those components, I think are used here as well. But the volume of those types of opportunities is much more limited here. And so the number that's just struck me right off the bat, if HOC manages, I think you own and manage a little less than 10,000 units in the county versus the 220,000 units in Vienna. I mean, by order of magnitude, even if you adjust for the scale of the county versus Vienna, I mean, that's 10 times or more the amount of sort of publicly owned or managed housing. And so our model is different. We don't have the 100-year legacy of social housing, but the role of sort of progressive activists, housing-oriented folks, the role of our politicians to help us figure out how the public sector can help our region achieve these goals, I think is really exemplified in the contrast between how we operate and this amazing information you've shared with us. I'd love a little bit of insight into maybe more of the cost of housing in Vienna, and I think just to lay out, when we think about a new construction of a new housing unit, less than 50% often of the housing unit construction, of the housing production cost is construction. So you have soft costs, which can easily equate to 30%, sometimes more of the cost of the housing unit. You have the land costs, which could be 20% of the cost of the housing unit, depending on the location. And so while subsidy of maybe a 35% construction cost subsidy would help, clearly, that's just a drop in the bucket when hard costs are only 50% sometimes of the actual production cost. So a little more discussion of that would be helpful. And then, one of the other nuances that I think I'd love to understand is parking is a major cost of housing production here. So even affordable housing production, we live in a county, but we live in a country and a region where car ownership is necessary for a lot of people. And things like the Purple Line, things like what we do with improving bus and metro access, those will help. But at the end of the day, if we have to spend $20,000 or $50,000 per unit or per parking space in addition to the cost of building the home, that adds a tremendous cost to the production of that housing. So I'd love to understand how that works too.
The parking costs are very important, and were very important in the past. But in the last decades, we supported very much the public traffic, yes, and so that only 27% of the traffic is a private traffic. 10 or 20 years ago, it was 35%, yes. And so it's not necessary that everybody who wants an apartment, a dwelling in the subsidized buildings must have a parking place. Not everyone, yes. There's always a fight how much we give parking places, but it's not one-to-one, yes, and that's very, very important. And so the question before, you must say a third of the building costs will be subsidized, yes, and very important is that our Wohn fund has 2,800,000 square meters. That is, we are the proprietors of this land, and this is very important for our system too.
I maybe can add some details to this parking issue, because it's not only that the private ownership of cars is decreasing in the city. This is also a long process, of course, and the city also changed the law. It was one-to-one, one apartment, one parking lot in the past, but now if you're close, and they changed this to 100 square meter, one parking lot, so it's a bit less normally. And also if you're very close to a metro station, it will be even reduced. And when we know that you have to invest 25,000 euros for a parking lot also in Vienna, this is a high potential for more affordable housing. And also it encourages that people will not use their car so often, and so this can be it can also be reinvested in public transport, so the city can reinvest it. And I think it's of course a long journey, but it's really a good way. And for instance, in the Wohnprojekt, we reinvested this money in community spaces because the people wanted to have a close community life, and so you can have other qualities in public housing then.
I think it also demonstrates, the success of being able to do that means denser housing generally, more urban, making the job to work, job to home connections easier, but also having environments where you can thrive without a vehicle. And that obviously, outside of housing policy, is land use policy and how willing we are to support high density urban development and concentrating that development in nodes that are supported by transportation infrastructure. And a component that Katerina and I were talking about sort of before the panel started, that is another distinction is unit sizes, and that may have been a discussion yesterday, but an average urban residential building in the United States or in our markets will be designed with a 65-foot building face to building face dimension, which would allow for a 30-foot deep residential unit. And in our discussion this morning, you said that a 15-meter or 45-foot dimension would be a more similar standard in Vienna. So that's a significant reduction in the width of the building, which allows for obviously more density to be provided within a block or a fixed land area. But it also means that the unit sizes are significantly smaller. And here we often have size minimums, and you were describing to me that you actually have size maximums. So it's a very different dynamic.
Yeah, it's this topic of sufficiency. I mean, it's not sustainable to use more and more space for living on the individual side. You can make this more intelligent by giving this to community spaces and share spaces and public space. And I think we have to learn to live closer together. Yeah.
Thank you, McLean. I'd like to highlight, as I mentioned a moment ago, we at the council intentionally zoned 3 communities for a public-private partnership with HOC and EYA to build affordable communities that are mixed income. Chevy Chase Lakes, and we just opened buildings in the last year. We've opened buildings there. I encourage you all to visit. You can see the development that's happening there on the purple line. And those are communities that are mixed income communities, HOC owned. We also did that in West Bard, and we've had hell getting the West Bard plan through. There's been NIMBY opposition to all of these projects, no question. And then the last is Littensville. And there's a lot of public land in Littensville that in all of these, we have public land, HOC-owned land, or nonprofit mission-driven partner housing authority-owned land, and we envision a public-private partnership to build a mixed-income community. And in all of them, there has been tremendous opposition, to your point, to the zoning needed to support the development, let alone the financing that will subsequently be required, and so on and so forth. But they were signature elements of all 3 plans: intentional zoning to support specific partnerships between the public and the private sector to create affordable communities. Linda McMillan has been the brains behind all of this from the county side, and she is such a tremendous resource for our community on housing policy. Many of you may not know Linda, but we all do. And Linda, I'd like to turn it to you for whatever you might like to contribute.
Well, I just wanted to say, of course, as staff, my job is to serve the council. And I think that what we were so interested in, and of course, Pamela Lindstrom brought this to Hans Riemer. And so as we do master plans and we do zoning, and oftentimes we talk about units and we need more housing and we talk about it by unit size, but it's clear in all these discussions that what the council is really trying to do is to build really vibrant communities that are inclusive, that have mixed incomes, that have all kinds of transit modes. And so there's a vision behind this, even though sometimes we kind of get in bogged down, did we build this many units or what's the percentage? But we know we need more housing. And so the goal is to really, I think, take any opportunity that we can to bring new information and to learn about how to achieve the numbers goals, but to achieve them in a way that really serves the community really well and builds for the future and builds opportunity for everyone. So I think I would just say, as a staff person to the council members, they are always interested in new ideas and better ideas, and as staff, we're here to try to help them get that information and to hear from the public.
All right, we'll now turn it to the audience. I'd like to ask Pam if she has the first question, and we'll pass the mic around. And I think our official time may be out, but since no one's leaving, I think you're all interested. We'll go as long as our guests are willing to continue to entertain questions. Pam. Is that on?
Yeah. Yes. This has been a very good discussion today already, and but there's a few other little items that I would like to put into the discussion. One is
hold it close.
Am I?
You have to hold it close. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I wanted to put in a few words that Casey Anderson, the planning board chairman, said yesterday, but he's not here today. A couple of his musings that are definitely relevant. One was that the number of housing units in Montgomery County is going down, and he said, why is the production of housing in Montgomery County falling when it should be rising? Number two was in our metro station areas, the land costs per housing unit, and I think I got this right, the land cost per housing unit can be up to $60,000, which makes it very hard to produce anything affordable. And number three was, he said, it is not unrealistic to think of the county government taking a much more active role in the housing market, which is what we're about here today. And that's the bottom line in Vienna, is that the municipality takes a much more active role in the housing market, largely writ. And how can we work toward that in Montgomery County? And if the planning board chairman and the county council want that to be the case, then let's get on with it. And my other observation is that you have the active participants in the housing business in Vienna here today, the private developer, the various components of the municipality, and one representative of the private sector involved. And I wanted to point out that this is an example of how socialism actually works in Europe. You have these very intimate public-private partnerships involved in everything, and the private enterprise serves much the same role there that they serve here. But then I wanted to point out that there's one major factor of private enterprise that's involved in the development business in Vienna that's not representative here, and that's the retail sector. And I really wish, and next time you can bring somebody from one of the big supermarket chains or the bakery chains from Vienna, which are just as much of a revelation to folks here as as any of you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Stephanie.
All right, good morning, everybody. First of all, my name is Stephanie Riddick, and I am with the Executive Committee of the Sierra Club of Montgomery County. So thank you all for coming to this. Looking forward to a great discussion. I want to thank Councilmember Reamer for organizing this, all of the staff, county staffers. Looking forward to more conversations with all of you and our Vienna representatives, and also Pam for bringing the idea to us. I'm currently serving as clean energy leader for the Sierra Club in Montgomery County, and I noticed in the video that there is some solar on some of the buildings that were presented. And when we talk about affordability, especially for the long term, energy has a lot to do with that. And I want to know, is clean energy, solar energy, or geothermal, is that a standard feature on these structures, and how is that, kind of developed in terms of the financing and the operating, costs? Is that a standard feature that you do in your planning process, and how is that moving forward?
Yes, of course, as there is this fourth pillar, ecology, you also have to have a very good ecological concept for subsidized housing. And that means, and there's even, you have to have a better energy level than the law is asking for, the building law in Vienna is asking for. So if you do subsidized housing, you normally have a higher energy standard at the houses. So some of them are passive house, but at least every building is low energy level. I don't know. I don't know the translation, but it's a very good standard. And also, alternative energy is a topic. Though in Vienna we have a very special system for heating and warm water. It's called Fernwärme. I don't know how to translate it. Actually, we burn the waste, and that is providing us the energy for heating and for water in the central areas of Vienna. So this is a very very ecological and way, and it's also provided by the city. It's an infrastructure that is provided by the city. So when you have a central plot, you have to take this energy. You are not allowed to take gas or other fossil forms. So fossil forms are not at all subsidized anymore in the social housing. Yeah.
Perhaps one sentence. We have a law from the last year, and that means that in new buildings that's not allowed to have oil for heating. Yes, then you have to have fossil energy. Yes, in the old buildings, what we already have, it's possible, but not in the new buildings.
Hi, my name, as mentioned earlier, is Vaughn Stewart. I'm one of the members of the Maryland House of Delegates. I'm a new state-level official, and I just want to thank Pam for coming up with this idea, to Councilmember Reamer for executing it, and for all of y'all for coming down. I wish we could get you guys down to Annapolis, our state capital, where you could give a similar presentation maybe next time, but this has been really instructive and really enlightening for me. Being on the state level, my question is a natural one, which is if you guys could talk a little bit more about how this is done at the various levels of government in Austria and in Vienna. So is the financing entirely from the federal or state level? Does Vienna as a city pitch in, and what percentage of the financing do they kick in? And then secondly, on the decision-making part, in terms of coming up with the competition for the developers to compete, or kind of at a lawmaking side, how much authority do the state or the federal officials have in mandating what the municipality does? Or do they just sort of give a blank check, and then Vienna itself as a city determines how this is run, if that makes sense? And thank you again. This has been great.
As I just give one sentence before all the experts are answering the detailed question. Let me just give one explanation of a specific thing about Vienna. Vienna is a city and a state at the same time. Just for, if not everyone knows that. That's a special construction, not unsimilar to DC, but DC doesn't have statehood, but Vienna has. So I'm just saying, so that is an important part about the legislation process because Vienna is a municipality, but at the same time it's a state level, so they have the possibility for legislation which is really giving them on a state level the power, but at the same time all the measure implementation measurement possibilities as a framework as a municipality they use as well. And about the financing, I give back to the experts.
Yes, the money comes, we have in Austria, we are a federal state, yes, so we have the federal state and we have 9 provinces with own legislation. Yes. The most part of the taxes are on the federal level, yes, we must say, and only a smaller part on the level of the lender of the provinces, but we have an interesting system. All 4 years we have the provinces and the federal government meet, and they make Finanzausgleich. The finance plan, yes, they make a finance plan, and that means they say so much money get the lands, and this is for the federal government. And so we also discuss, for example, this 0.5 taxes here is also planned in this finance plan. Yes, and so it's always a discussion between the lender and the federal government where the money goes. But these subsidies for the housing is for all 9 provinces. Yeah? The other provinces have this too, but they use it in another sense. Yes, for example, in Lower Austria, where you don't have big cities, they subsidize 1 per million apartments, 1 per million houses. Yes, and that's they want it. We must say, we discussed it yesterday. It's very important that we say in Vienna we have 2 million inhabitants, and it's not possible that every family has her own house. Yes, and because of that we have big buildings. Yes. But what you didn't mention is one problem that we have in Europe, a third very important player, and that's the European Union. Yes, and the European Union sometimes wanted to say or had a decision that subsidies for housing should only go to the very poor. Yes, and we said, no, that's not possible. Yes, it's exactly what we don't want. Yes, because we see in the suburbs of Paris, there we have these systems. Yeah, there is the situation that they have social housing system where only the 10% of the poorest are, and the poor people and people with problems with drugs and with alcohol and so on, and they are all in this social system, in these social houses, and there are always problems. We have another system. We say social housing is also for the middle class, and we are for the social mix. Yes, and so our mayor, our then mayor, and wrote a letter to other mayors of 30 cities, of 30 big cities of Europe, of European Union, that they call the European Union that it should be the case of the countries, yes, and not of the European Union, to decide how we want to make a social system and social housing. Yes, and I think since this letter from many countries, from many cities, from different parties, the European Union is more or less quiet in this question, and I think we won this match.
May I just point something in addition out, just to say, as we just heard, there is a tax on the federation nation level, which is this 0.5% of the income, which is dedicated to housing. But the states are able to put some money in it too, so that can be widened, as some of the states also do. And the possibility that Vienna has something like $550 million to spend on social housing is, of course, because of we use both ways of determine money on it. And maybe something else. We've just talked about the stock of keeping land. Of course, Kurt Stützenbecher mentioned there are 2.8 million square meters of land that is kept by Wohnfonds at the moment. And this is only possible because we started in early times to keep land, not to sell it for a project that is not in the interest of the city of Vienna, that are not helping a social system. And of course, we are still collecting land that is getting free for some reasons, probably for not using areas that have been used for train services or train tracks or whatever. They are reducing now in the city, and we are taking this resource of land back to use for new building projects, and of course in a wide area for social building, social housing, and infrastructure, of course.
I want to ask a quick question, and then we'll go back to the audience. How much of the land in Vienna is used for single-unit housing, and how much is used for farming?
Honestly, I can't give you a number on that.
Is it a lot?
Yeah.
I think in Montgomery County, probably 98% of our land, maybe 95% of our land is either single-unit use, farming, or parks.
There are still farming areas, but and vineyards, of course.
Vineyards. We have those. We have those.
Vineyards. But of course, the major part is much more compressed. So we need 70%. I've just heard is the part that is quite dense.
70% is more dense.
Yeah.
Back to the audience.
It's a very compact city.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, it's a very compact city, and in the zoning there are no new plots for single-family houses. So this is actually not possible anymore. The city of Vienna won't do this kind of zoning anymore.
Yes, and where we don't have houses, buildings, there we have nature. Yes, that's the Vienna wood. Yes, and there it's not allowed to build houses, yes, and so we don't have the possibility to support the dream of everybody should have his own house. That's not possible because of the space.
So just this conversation, I think, highlighted to me similar challenges that we have, obviously, with our federal government, state governments, local governments. Obviously, our region with 3 states is, the housing is a regional issue, not a local issue. Montgomery County can do many things to address the housing challenges of its occupants and residents, but obviously the challenges are for our entire metropolitan area, and I think that exacerbates some of these challenges, especially if people aren't acting in the same way or don't have the same priorities, maybe on different sides of state lines or municipal lines. But the other thing that it highlights, and I think, Hans, you hit on this, the government has limited opportunities to really make a big difference. And so leadership that you've exhibited, your colleagues have exhibited on master plans is a key area where housing production can be created. That is an area where you can have a direct impact on supply and demand. And when you live in a market-based economy where without the strength of a social system for housing, then if you can pull the levers of supply and demand through housing, the zoning to create more housing opportunities and more density, that is a direct opportunity to help address this issue. And then I think that the bigger challenge, maybe once you successfully navigate those master planning processes, are actually ensuring the execution of those visions. And so those aren't easy discussions, and the objections of NIMBYs don't stop at the end of a master plan process. And frankly, the political courage and leadership that's required to execute those plans, to make the most of the public resources, the public lands, the limited levers that you all have to pull on, that doesn't stop either. So we are very engaged as a private sector developer in advocating for housing creation in these various sector plans. And we appreciate our colleagues with the leadership of Hans and others. But that leadership continues and needs to continue, and it needs to come sort of throughout the county and from the grassroots, that just because an area has been zoned or just because a master plan has been put into effect, that doesn't necessarily mean that the housing is going to come immediately. And with the challenges of construction costs, with the challenges of economic cycles that when you rely on private developers are more impactful than maybe they are where the social sector has a larger impact. We need that continued leadership, and we need to make the most of the land that's owned by the government, controlled by the government, and where the limited resources of the government can be put into effect to generate the most housing. So,
well said.
Hi, it's very nice to meet you all this morning. I'm Chloe Cheng, and I'm a scientist, and I had education in Europe. So after I studied from Europe, I moved to the U.S. because I met my husband, and we are citizens from U.S. area, and we moved from California 15 years to the Montgomery County, and I try to I have now two questions, one for Vienna councils members. I have no idea, what is the mortgage term for the bank, for any development for the housing market? What is the mortgage years, 30 years guaranteed, or what is term for the mortgage terms from the bank? Do you have something like that? The mortgage bank, they support the property.
Are you talking about the conditions of the loans?
Yes,
yes.
Condition of the mortgage loan.
In fact, at the moment, loans are very cheap, in fact. So we are talking about some fixed conditions, something around 1.5 to 2% over 25 years.
Over 25 years? So, or in 25 years, the housing is actually belong to the bank, their ownership or development.
Belongs to the bank?
I'm
just not quite sure if I understand you right.
Right.
What is you're asking if the ownership of our housing is changing to the bank?
No, until all those mortgage pay off to the bank after 25 years. I mean, those 25 years, still bank has a shared liability between.
So let me put it another way. As the city of Vienna, we do not need to put any securities on that. So the banks just give loans without taking any securities on that. So that means that as well the land as also the building really belongs to the city. So there is no big risk of losing that, if that is the question. And the reason for it is of course the very good financial conditions of the city of Vienna. Honestly.
Thank you so much for the question, answer. And I have one question to the Montgomery County Councils.
I think if it's okay, we could move to the next question. Is that possible? You can come to me afterwards, and I will answer your question. Yes, thank you very much. To the other side of the room, and then we're already a half an hour over our promised time, but I've got to get Mike Ducka in after this as well.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm Richard Allen with the Housing Committee, the Montgomery County branch of the NAACP. Just want to thank you for doing this, Councilman Reimer and the county government officials, and also the Sierra Club and others. I think it's an important step towards our getting a better picture to what can be possibly applicable to Montgomery County and comparing to Austria. But in terms of the housing you've developed in Vienna and Austria, did you address ADA reasonable accommodation issues, or do you have an ADA or a Fair Housing Act or an act that requires considering people with disabilities into the design and the structure of these facilities?
Disability access.
People
Is that a
with
requirement?
disability.
And is there non-discrimination?
So, of course, the legal situation in Vienna says that all the apartments, all the dwellings have to be without any without barriers to people with disabilities. So that's one of the basis things. And in addition, there are some there's the possibility to include apartments that are prepared for special needs. But the first thing is standard, and the second thing is only a part of the apartments we consider for special needs.
Okay. And then my other quick question is, how does the public transit system and transportation connect to these housing units you've been developing? What is your system like?
The connection to public transport is very well in Vienna, but for the whole city, I have to say. There is a very dense public transport network, including metros and buses and trams and whatever. And so the connection is, in most of the cases, not the biggest problem. In areas where new cities have been, or new parts of the city have been constructed, it even has happened that the metro lines have been there just before the first building has come. Perfect example is the Seestadt, where we call it U-Bahn, the underground, has already taken up operation before any of the buildings had started to build.
Thank you.
And we have, for a disabled person, we have a special transport system too. So who is very disabled, he can ring, and then we send a special car to bring him to where he wants.
Great questions. Oh, Ralph.
Good morning, and thank you. Ralph Bennett, Affordable Housing Conference. The last 24 hours has been a revelatory event for all of us, and we deeply appreciate your being here and the contribution you've all made. Two quick suggestions. First of all, competitions, which are such a part of the development of this housing. The county has held competitions in the back in the past. If you may remember, the Potomac Horse Farm, which we got second place in, and a shelter for women over in the Rockville Golf Course, which was also an open competition, and we designed and built that one. So there is a precedent for competitions here in the county, and I strongly encourage you to consider doing it. You can specialize the requirements to get what you want, and then you get a whole series of suggestions about what to do on a given site, transit-oriented, for example, and there are willing architects who are happy to participate. Secondly, the use of public land. The precedent of the housing building at the intersection of New Hampshire Avenue and Route 29 illustrates the enormous amount of land available here, particularly if the suburbs become a little more dense. I'm going to send the council staff a book called the Suburban Repair Manual, which illustrates how to insert higher density buildings. If you look, for example, at school sites around the county, they were set aside at a time when there was a lot of land, and there is a lot of land available for joint development of housing on school sites, not to mention a number of other places. I hope you'll consider that as well. Thank you, and thank you for the event.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Appreciate your work on housing. In the back.
Okay, I have more comments than questions, really. It has to do with the fact that the United States is a very different system than is Vienna. This country has become great because of the individuality, the ability of people to achieve and to live in home ownership has been one of the important social aspects of this country. So people take a lot of pride in home ownership, and that system is very different than your system. So I know that Mr. Reamer and the council have very significant ideas of how they would like to mold our society, but a lot of people here don't necessarily appreciate all the changes that Mr. Reamer and the council want to make. Now, I don't have a question, I have comments. And, right, well, plenty of other people have spoken, and I haven't had any time. So I would like to say, because my opinion is different, please don't cut
It's okay
me
if
off.
you'll please make your comment, but if you could just please leave time for others.
My whole point is all of this, that you have your ideas about what the society should be in Montgomery County. And a lot of people with money in this county have fled because of the changes that you have brought. And so, you know, while there may be very appropriate places to have the type of society or housing that Vienna has, that doesn't mean that single-family housing zoning should be changed to allow for your dream. You aren't king of the county, and the council, just like with ADUs, has pushed through different types of zoning that have blindsided a lot of homeowners. And then to fund this sort of thing, you know, with increasing taxes to do this is
Thank
not
you.
necessarily
I think your comments
what
are relevant.
the
I think you're
county
speaking
wants.
for the views of many people in Montgomery County. Reality check. Thank you very much. You've said your piece. I appreciate that.
Good
May I go now?
afternoon, everyone. My
I would
name
like.
is
Okay.
June
I
Henderson.
wanted Michael Ducka to get a chance to speak, but please continue.
I wasn't going to speak, but I am now. After your interruption with her, we do have freedoms here. Up until from October, and you've probably seen me, Representative or Councilmember Hans, at a meeting, so I must speak. I made it a point of getting here today. I am with the group of the Friends of White Oak. Perhaps I don't look homeless. I was from October to July. I was. No one has helped. So I do appreciate council for having this. I appreciate the representatives from Vienna because they do have humility. They care about humanity. They put people first. So the main thing that we suffer here in Montgomery County, we have one of the largest ethnically diverse communities in the county. What we suffer from is not listening to the people, not having the people have that input in things that affect them. So often our representatives forget where their income comes from. People come first. The priority should be engaging individuals. You segregate us by income. You segregate us by our social issues, drugs, you're alcoholic, you're low income, you live in HOC. Until you stop segregating us based on social issues, based on income, we will never get to where Vienna is. I had to stand up.
Thank
I
you.
intended not to.
Well, thank you. I think you speak to the philosophy of social housing. Michael Decca.
Hey, I'm Michael Dudka. So, as has been mentioned many times in this debate, that we have this phenomenon in Montgomery County called NIMBYs, or people who don't want any changes to their neighborhoods, and also will protest anytime any sort of housing unit is constructed. So I wanted to kind of ask the Viennese officials if you have this same phenomena. Do people oppose housing construction? And then also, like we just heard, I mean, we have a problem with homelessness, severe problems with homelessness in this country and in Montgomery County. And I wanted to ask, are the problems with homelessness in Vienna comparable to what they are in Montgomery County?
Yeah, these are
trying to figure out what that is in
How do you even? We have homelessness, but we fight against homelessness. Yes, and we try that everybody who is homeless has the chance to get an apartment, to get a dwelling. Yes, and to have a better situation to live. We are not always successful. But there are some homeless people too who don't want to go into these apartments, what we are offering, yes, but this is a minority, yes, but there are some people, and that a second problem is that we in Vienna, we have not much homelessness, but because of the open borders, and we are for these open borders, yes, there come homeless people from other countries, from Hungary, from Romania, and so, and we have the situation that we want to help them too, yes. That's the first question. The second question is, I'm very sad that it is a fact that if we want to develop a new building project, yes, there is sometimes an opposition of these people who already have their dwellings, yes, and who already live in good situations, yes, because they say, now I look out of the window and all is green before my window. And now come this city of Vienna and they want to build there a new building, yes, and I don't want this because that's not okay. And so we have to persuade the people, and sometimes there are people groups who are against, but at the end of the day, usually we are successful that we persuade them and that we build the new buildings nevertheless.
All right. I think we've asked all that we can ask of our guests who've traveled across the world to be with us today. I'm going to turn it to my colleague Shruti Bhatnagar to close us out in a moment, but I really want to thank you for the extensive dialogue that you have enabled us to have. We've learned so much. I'd like to just have a round of applause for the Viennese officials. We're 45 minutes past our allotted time, but I feel like everyone is gripped in their seat. We're not? We're only 15 minutes past the allotted time? Only 15 minutes. Okay. All right, sorry. Somebody told me that we said we would stop at 11, so that's good. Now I feel better. But this has been, I feel like everyone could keep going, and we could keep going. And that's just the reality of the conversation. Shruti Bhatnagar is the president of the chair of the Sierra Club in Montgomery County, and she has some reflections to share as well.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Hans. I want to start by thanking the officials from Vienna for taking the time to come here and share this model of social housing with us. I think it's incredible what you have achieved in Vienna, and certainly it was a very interesting, very educational and informative session, hearing what you've done and how you've integrated. I think most people in this room know this, but especially for our guests, I just want to mention that Sierra Club is a grassroots advocacy organization and focuses on environmental issues. So I also want to recognize Michael Friedman and Tina Slater, who are executive committee members from Sierra Club, and we have individuals who are committed in making sure that we are looking at all these issues that are critical to our county from the environmental standpoint, working on affordable housing and transportation, and how do we think about reducing gas emissions. And we have a crisis of affordable housing in Montgomery County right now. We work closely with the county officials in addressing those needs and supporting figuring out how we can address those critical needs. But, this isn't just, as you said, it's not just an issue of affordable housing. We have many people who travel from other counties who come to work in Montgomery County, so it increases the transportation, it increases all, the crisis for the environmental issues. But beyond the quality of life, simply from a climate perspective, Sierra Club has been and is a very strong advocate for more affordable housing in attractive, mixed-use, walkable neighborhoods that are near public transit. And the Center for American Progress just recently released a report that has urged the lawmakers to fight the affordable housing crisis as part of a larger effort to prepare communities against the worst effects of climate change. The report found that there is a national shortage of 7 million homes for low-income renters, and this shortage disproportionately affects disabled people and minority communities that also have the fewest resources to recover from natural disasters that are linked to climate change. So the conversations such as these we are having today on social housing can really help us prepare, make investments, and make better decisions to address these critical issues in our county. I want to thank you, Councilmember Reamer, and all the county officials who have really, engaged Sierra Club in these conversations, and we look forward to taking these conversations forward to discuss how these lessons that we can take away from these conversations, we can bring them into our county and think about how we can expand affordable housing, but also combat all these critical issues on environment. So thanks to all of you, and looking forward to working with all of you on this.
Thank you so much, Shruti. Again, another round of applause for our guests. Thank you very much. And there will be an archive of this session on the internet. You can watch it again if you'd like. And don't forget to visit the exhibit. There's an amazing book at the exhibit that I really commend. It's worth the trip to get it. And if you want a copy, the delegation is offered to send a stack to me, so you can email me the same address you use for your RSVP, and we'll accumulate those, and we can have a stack of these here for you to pick up in the future. And thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.
bleeding right now because you know what it'd be like to have to get out of a train, stand on the platform, wait another 4 minutes at rush hour, longer otherwise, to get a train trying to get where you're going. So this weather is a gift today, but it kind of blunts the benefit that everybody's getting. We're really grateful to the Metro Board of Directors for doing this.